What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to the grind. Man, it's been a couple weeks. There's been a lot going on, a lot of changes happening, and I will be sharing those with you guys throughout these next few weeks. But today we are jumping on a conversation that we had with Coach Martin on the Coach Martin Show. It was just such a blessing and honor to be on his show, and we just dived into some really great convos together, and there's going to be many, many more of these that we do together. So I just ask you to sit back, take a listen, and I hope that you guys get something from this today. Let's dive in.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Coach Martin Show. I'm your host, Coach Martin. Today we got a special guest. I love having guests on. We got Dillon. So Dillon is a guy, you're going to get to know him a little bit. Dillon is an entrepreneur at heart. Dillon owns multiple businesses, but we're going to get into that in a second. So Dillon, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, well, we're glad to have you on the show.
Yeah.
So Dillon, I'd like to start off, tell us a little about you. Who are you?
Yeah. I'll start with my background. I started a car wash business when I was in high school. And so I knew I always had this entrepreneur drive from the very beginning. And every time I had a job, I was just struggling maintaining that job. Like, this just doesn't feel right for me. And so I know from a very young age, I've always had that drive, and I always want to start a business, couldn't keep a job, or had a hard time keeping a job. I just felt the drive to lead. And so over the years, I've learned through all these businesses that different aspects of the business, of what to do, what not to do. I don't know exactly how far back you want to go in the background of as far as like where I started, how I started, things like that. But started with the car wash business, and now we have a hair salon here in Temecula and a marketing company here in Temecula. 8 employees now. Huge story behind all that. I don't know if you want me to dive into all that, but yeah.
Yeah, no, and I do. We're going to get into that for sure. It's interesting because, there could be disagreement on this for sure with people, but I'm a believer that, when you read the word, we know that the first thing God told us about himself is he's creative. In the beginning, God created. And if we're made in the image of God, which we are, the Bible says it, I think that creativity is inside all of us, right? So even though, I know for me, it took, even though, I did things, and I think I had a little bit of it when I was younger, I didn't really start really recognizing that creativity till I was in my 30s. You know what I mean? So some people get it a little bit earlier, some people get it a little bit later, but wherever you are, trust me when I tell you, I believe it's inside all of us, right? So that's cool. So you were able to kind of decipher that early, right? So with your car wash business, then from there, did you go to a marketing company or did you go to the salon? How did that work?
Yeah. So I was doing the car wash business, kind of hard to keep up with when I was in high school. So I ended up going and starting to work at Best Buy, which was different for my age around that time because a lot of people were getting like fast food jobs, not a lot of people getting like retail jobs. A lot of people getting the retail jobs at that time were a lot older. I was working with people in their late 20s, early 30s. And so that whole process of just like getting hired, working for somebody is when I started to initially realize like, hey, this isn't what I'm built to do, but it's what I need to do right now. From there, I started working at an airline factoring company. And again, just did not feel like I was living in my calling. Fast forward a little bit, ended up having kids young. And so I did what I needed to do. And I jumped into truck driving for quite a few years just to pay bills, make sure that family was taken care of. But gradually, I just really started to realize like, I cannot keep living in this sense of like, working for somebody. Like, this is not what I'm called to do. And the closer I got to God, the more I realized like this is not what he's called me to do. So fast forward a little bit more, got out of truck driving. We went through some things with my wife, Crystal, mentally. And so I had to step out of truck driving. And at the end of the day, it was a godsend because it got me out of a place where God didn't even want me in the first place. And at the same time, he was taking care of something within Crystal. And so fast forward a little bit further, we were homeless. And we're living out of a trailer, jumping around campgrounds, 6 kids. We actually lived in a hotel for 2 weeks. And the Lord really just spoke to me and was like, you really need to just step into your calling. Because I was sitting there praying, Lord, if you get me out of this, I will serve you till the day I die. Like I literally just need your help. Like my family's struggling and we need to get out of this. And so that's when he really was like, you continue to not obey me, you're not stepping into what I've called you to do. Well, fast forward a little bit, like maybe a few months go by, and one of Crystal's old coworkers reached out. She had a salon suite. She was like, hey, I'm not working here Sundays, Mondays, and Tuesdays. Would you like to take over on those days and take clients and, start your own business? And Crystal texted me right away and was like, hey, what do you think about this? Now, this has happened before. And before, I was like, no, it's like, we just need a steady income, blah, blah, blah. This time I was like, you know what? Let's pray about it. We prayed about it for a good week or so. And we're like, yeah, let's do it. We always knew, because we had gone back to church now. Sundays was a non-negotiable. We're going to church on Sundays. We are serving. That is when we're like, okay, Sundays, we'll go to church and you'll do half a day at the salon after, and then work full day Monday, full day Tuesday. Well, within the first month, 30 days, she was making more money than we had ever made in a month. And I was like, okay, well, God's here. God's in this. Like, this is what he wanted us to do. I'm stepping into that calling that he's always had on my heart to start a business, and we're going to do this together. That's when I told Crystal, like, hey, I promise that I will get the clients in the door. I know how to get clients coming. Your only job is to keep them coming back and client happiness. That is it. The rest will take care of itself. And so after that first month, we started, okay, let's look for your own salon suite so you can have a whole week of doing clients. Within that first month, she got her own salon suite. We moved into there. She was in there for about 4 months. I was like, man, I just feel this stirring. Like, we got to do more. We need a bigger space. Because they had a double suite too, where you could fit like 2 chairs in there and you could have another person in there with you. I was like, man, it would be great if we could get one of those, hire somebody, we can move to that suite. But nothing was open at the place that we were at. About a month goes by, and somebody at the place that we were at reached out to Crystal and was like, hey, I have somebody moving out of my suite. I need a smaller suite. Would you be interested in trading? Now, this is a complete godsend because we weren't seeking it. She came to Crystal. And as soon as Crystal texted me, like, we got to do it. Like, this has been on our heart for like a month, and now it just appeared and came up. So we moved in there, hired our first employee. 5 months go by, and I tell Crystal, I don't know how this makes any sense at all, but I feel like the Lord really wants us to move into something bigger. And at that time, she's like, that doesn't make any sense to me. How are we supposed to move into something bigger? Like, we just moved into this place. It's like, I don't know. I just really feel the stirring to do that. Like, he wants more from us. And so I started the search for like a storefront. Well, I was looking at one close by, and when I reached out to the brokers had said, yeah, you can look at that one, but there's this other place in Temecula, previous hair salon, they're moving out. Everything's already set up. Would you want to go look at that? I started crying because it was like, God is in this whole situation. And if he truly wants us to have this, he's going to provide it for us. Because at the time, and this is the part that made no sense. At the time, we had no credit. We didn't have the finances really. We had one employee, and now we're looking for this big space. And so I went and looked at it, and I'm like, man, this is perfect. Like, we don't have to do any build outs. So we don't need a ton of finances, things like that. And so we sent in the application. I went over to that parking lot for 3 weeks straight, every single night, prayed, Lord, let your will be done. If you want this to happen, open the door. If not, just close the store. For 3 weeks straight. By the 3rd week, we got an email saying that we got approved. And we were able to move in the following month. And so it was like during this time where I'm like, okay, this is what happens when you're living in God's calling, what he's called you to do. and when you're actually praying and listening to him. And I think so many times, like, we can get so focused on money. And I know you had talked about that this last week, is we get so focused on the money will follow, but we need to first follow what God's called us to do so he can be in every situation. Right. So it was just like a cool experience, a blessing, very emotional time for us, just within 1 year to go from homeless to now having a salon that has a storefront. So that's a little bit of our story with that. And then after that, I got into marketing full time for a company locally in Marietta. Was doing a little bit of work for them. And then I started seeing like friends and family getting taken advantage of by marketing companies and just price gouging. And like a lot of marketing is the same for every business. It's very similar. And so I was like, you know what? I feel called to just step out on my own and help friends and family with their businesses and bring what I know and my knowledge to them and do whatever I can for them. So just this last year, I stepped out and started my own marketing company. Within that first month, I already had 1 or 2 clients, and has gradually grown since, and it's been a blessing to just be able to connect with you and work with you, and now have an employee with the marketing company. And overall, it's just really cool to see God moving and God doing his work like he can. So
yeah, super interesting. So there's a lot there. There's a couple pieces that I kind of want to touch on, because it's interesting what happens is, and this isn't like, even right now, this is from the beginning of time. So it doesn't matter what generation you want to go to, they all have done the same thing that we do today. So we make bad choices and we get in trouble, and then we're like, oh, we're in trouble, Lord, save us. Now, a lot of times, like, we get through that, but we continue doing it. It's like a Ferris wheel. It goes around and round and round and round. And if you read, especially in the Old Testament, it's like story after story after story after story after story of this is how it happens. They they cry out to God when they're in trouble, and then things are good when God saves them. And then they make bad choices, turn their back on God, and they get back in trouble again. And it's like a perpetual thing. But it's interesting because, when you guys were going through what you were going through, right, it's easy to just sit there and stay there. But I think the interesting thing is 2 things happen when we're there. One, we either learn from it or we don't, and it repeats. So God uses every situation, and I think that's why God says all things work for the good. I think he uses every situation for an opportunity for you to grow. And I think what so many people miss, especially that come into the business world, is they think if they have the business, they think the thing is the thing that will allow them to get from A to B. And that's not how it works. It always starts with us. So God wants to use these areas, even if they're not the best areas, to grow us. So we're prepared. So that way, when the opportunity arises, we're able to walk through those doors. I'll give you an example. A lot of times when we think of David, we always know David killed Goliath, right? And we're like, oh, yeah, he did that. But what a lot of times we forget is when he was a shepherd, he fought the lion and the bear. Now, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. A lion comes and takes one of your sheep. You're going to go after it, grab it by the beard and kill it? No way. You're like, hey, enjoy the sheep. I got the other ones. There ain't no way I'm going to chase and fight this lion over one sheep. But what happened was God prepared him during that time. He stepped up to the challenge. He got prepared, and then he was able to be the only one that didn't fear and fought the giant, right? So I love that. I love the fact that, obviously, it was deposited in your heart. You were aware of it. I love the fact that even though you guys were going through hard times, your hard time doesn't define you. It doesn't have to define you. It's just it's an area where we can grow, and you grew from it. And I love the fact that you're faithful and you moved your feet, and ultimately from that, because I think ultimately, Dillon, I think God is looking for people that are going to take action. Yeah. And I think most people just don't take action. I think most people would rather live in comfort. They'd rather be safe. Even in Jeremiah, there's a part where, the people were talking about like, oh, we want no war. We want food. We really don't want to have to do anything. Yeah. We want to live in comfort. And there's no growth in comfort ever. So I think that God wants to do something big in all of his kids. Yeah. All of us. He's just saying, hey, who is willing to trust me and move their feet. So I love the story, man. I love it. And I love the fact that this is just the beginning of it.
Yeah.
So like, I think that a lot of times, we have big dreams, but I think that if God lifted the veil and we were able to see his dream for us, it would be totally different. He's like only showing us pieces. He's not showing us the whole thing, right? So I think that's super amazing. You know what I mean? And I think the cool thing as well, Dillon, is like, we just talked recently about, don't chasing the money. And I know that sounds intuitive where we're like, well, maybe we're doing this for the money. A lot of people might really think that. But what I'm trying to say is when you add value, because I think that's what all business is being a value adder.
Yeah.
We find a problem, we solve a problem. If you're talking about hair, people need to get their hair cut, you're solving a problem. If you're talking about marketing, every business in the world needs to get customers. You need to find clients. Marketing can help you do that. It's solving a problem.
Yeah.
So I think that's all business is. And I think the better we get at solving problems and providing value, I always say all the time, profit always follows value. So it's kind of like the money's the shadow. So as long as you're doing the things you're going to do, the money's going to follow. You can't run from it. It's just like turn around and it's there. So instead of chasing the shadow, chase the things and the principles that God tells us how to do it, why to do it, and who to do it for, and the money will always follow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely learned that along the way of like putting God first before anything else. Everything else will follow. Your home life, your friends, the money, everything else will follow. You just can't put anything ahead of God.
Yeah.
So
it's just really trust, right?
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about you and your story and how you got here. I know you've talked about it a little bit, but I know we're going to try and start doing this more frequently. So I think just giving everybody kind of a rundown of both of us and our backstory and what we're planning on doing. Because I know just with what we're doing here with the software company is going to be big things. I'm super excited about it. And I get fired up every time I get to be over here. So just tell me a little bit more about you and your story and how we got to where we are today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so I'm one where I wish I could tell you that I was, I went to college and I played sports and I was a professional athlete. I love sports and I think it'd be super cool to be able to do that. That wasn't my story. I went through school. School was okay. I was a wrestler. I learned a lot from practice and from being on the mat, those principles. Went to college for a couple of days. It wasn't for me. I went into the workforce. But one I always had a work ethic. I always believed was second to none, that my mother, who's a single mother, taught me. So everywhere I went, I was able to move up to become a manager, executive, or in charge wherever I went. So, and it kind of served me well. But when I was young, I moved up the ladder, in retail. But, one thing I didn't learn is your income's always capped, and you just don't really, when you're 18 years old, you just don't really know all that stuff. So you think it's great, because you're 20 years old and you bought your first home and you got a car and a truck and a boat and you think everything's great, but you don't think ahead. You just, you live more in the moment, things are cool. You know what I mean? But then, 10 years later, what happens is, costs rise, you have children, all these things are more expensive, but you're making the same amount of income. So it just didn't work for me. And that's when I really started to be like, okay, I need to, what do I need to do? And then I remember at first, I was going to become an appraiser and, go that route and have my own business. And everyone told me not to. All my friends at work are like, oh, you're crazy. There's safety. There's safety. You have a job, you have health insurance, you have a pension. Are you crazy? But, I knew that at that point, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And I had to do something different. Or I was going to sit here and complain about it for the rest of my life. And I went the route and it wasn't easy. It was very hard. But, I remember, now all of a sudden I'm, I have an appraisal company and, making $250,000 a year and then some. And I was like, and that's when the Lord opened my eyes to be like, I'm going to show you something different. And it just changed everything, right? So now the journey on this side right now is, years ago, the Lord deposited in my heart. I kind of played with software and being able to help athletes. So it's about the finding issues and solving those issues, right? And a lot of athletes have a hard time getting recruited, especially today. If you're a high school athlete, it's harder today to get recruited. You have the transfer portal, you have all this stuff. So basically going in, I kind of struggled with this. And then one day at church, the Lord literally used the preacher to stop service and walk over and pour into myself and my wife. And it was interesting because it was just a game changer. It was funny how good God is. So even when you don't listen, like at church, where you think that would never happen, it happened.
Yeah.
Like he stopped service and literally walked over and pointed and poured into us. So it was just super interesting. And, it was scary. Anyone that's done a business, it's scary. But again, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So we went forward and, we started our business, and we have a software company for athletes that are trying to get recruited. Basically allows them to get their game in front of any college coach at the push of a button. But then interesting, Dillon, was a few years later, the Lord showed me that, how you have an opportunity to help men and women jump into the space by building them a business and teaching them the things that I've taught you over the years, over that journey, and helping them build something super special in this multi-billion-dollar a year space. So now we have a coin that has both sides. We have a side where we have the software division where we help athletes with powerful software, but we have a business side where we help men and women come in and build thriving businesses. Whether somebody wants to maybe only make, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 extra a year, or maybe somebody wants to make over $500,000 a year. So that part is super, super, super exciting to me. But the thing I really love about it is not just helping people be able to build wealth in a space where they no longer have to trade their time for money, but I love the fact that we have now a captive audience that we can pour into on a daily basis. And I'll tell you, if you were to ask me this years ago, I would have never solved that piece. And I truly think that business is, and I'm going to go deep just for a second. I think business is this way too, because the bigger you get it, the more people that you have working for you. And the more people that you have working for you, right, the more influence and impact you have on those people. So it's kind of interesting because when you look at it, like the more you trust the Lord and you move your feet and you are faithful and you do it, and the bigger it gets, the more people that you can impact and influence, which I believe that's the ultimate goal anyways. We're supposed to be here for, to impact and influence people for the kingdom. So now I have, this big old group of, 100 plus men and women on the business and the affiliate side that I could go in and teach God's principles. I could go and share the goodness of God, and I have a captive audience to be able to do that, which is so fulfilling.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love hearing your story every time. And it's been cool to see like the business side and getting business owners on, because as a marketing company as well, you're like working with business owners. My question to you would be, what is the biggest thing that you see? Because I know we've talked about the red hula hoop. What is the biggest thing you see when people come on as a business owner to get them to move along and grow mentally, I guess I should say? Because a lot of times when they come in, they're very like, they're not thinking outside the box. Mm-hmm. They don't even know how to get a logo. Like they're just at the very beginning.
Yeah.
So what is the biggest challenge that you've seen trying to get them to take the next steps and grow as far as a business owner goes? Because I think a lot of times we've talked about it, we run into kind of the same issues with business owners, even outside of the sports box, like the marketing company. I run into the same issues of trying to get people to step outside of this, like only what they've known their whole life, and to think bigger.
Yeah. So that's actually a great question. So I'm going to start with a story. So I'm going to take you all the way back to back in the days of Egypt when God's people were slaves. And it was a horrible situation. We know that they were slaves for all those years. And then we know the story, right? God used Moses to go there, went through the plagues. The people ended up leaving. They go, God parted the sea, and then they went. Well, the interesting part is after that. So these men and women were in the desert for 40 years complaining. Like if you haven't read it, I'm going to encourage you to go and read this section. They're complaining over and over again. They're complaining because, food. They're complaining because, it's now they don't get meat. God gives them quail, like over and over. Then they start talking about, well, we had all of that back then. Think about how crazy that is for a minute, because you were slaves back there. Like you're like focused on food. So I realized that nothing's changed, right? It's the same back then as it is today. So a lot of times we get people in, I know that giving them the business, that's not how it is. They're never going to make money because they're the men and women in the desert. Most of them, they're the ones that are in the desert. Now there's outliers where they're not. They're focused and they're self-driven and they're going to do what they're going to do. But most people are desert walkers. They are. So being able to kind of get them to a point where, I can get them like realizing why they took this step. What are they trying to accomplish? Now, the truth of the matter is I could say like, hey, Dillon, welcome to the business, right? Welcome to the family. What are you looking to accomplish? And you can say, well, I'd like to do this. But the truth of the matter is you really don't believe in it, right? So I have to get you to believe in it. I have to get you to the point where you believe that it can be done, because you don't even believe it. So I would say for me, the first step is getting them to actually physically believe that they can have that. You know what I mean? That it could be theirs if they don't give up. If they do the things they need to do, they can accomplish that goal. Now, they may give me excuses, or they may say, well, coach, what if it takes me 10 years to earn $1 million? Well, the 10 years is going to pass no matter what.
Yeah.
It's going to pass. So you're either going to be in the situation you are right now in 10 years, or like, let's do it. So I think getting people to see it, to believe it, to get excited. And then ultimately now we want to be able to teach them and grow them and allow them to be able to go through that process much quicker than spending years and years in the valley of trial and error, right? Which is why we do the training and we so focus on that. But truth of the matter is, I think it just comes down to belief. You think about the Bible says to test all things and hold fast what's right or what's good. So I could say that I believe in fill in the blank, but if I'm not actually moving my feet or taking those steps, the truth of the matter is I don't really believe. And that's what it comes down to. A lot of times we have good intentions, so we sign up for something, but in our mind, in our subconscious, we don't believe, right? And then what happens is our subconscious will look for things to validate what our belief is. So like if I say, oh man, I really want to be able to do that, but I just believe that like, oh, life will, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. I start believing stupid stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then my subconscious will look for stuff. And the minute trouble comes, it'll say, oh, you were right.
Yeah.
There it is. So I got to help do a mind shift.
That's good.
With them and be like, erase all the bad the patterns and the nonsense that's not serving you. It's actually doing opposite. It's holding you back, and it's keeping you from walking into where God wants you to walk into. And think about it. When it was time for the people to walk in to the promised land, they all died in the desert. Everybody 20 years and older, except for Joshua and Caleb. So let's not be people that die in the desert. Let's be people that walk into the promises of God, trust him, we walk into it, and then we watch and see what his power does through us.
Yeah, that's so good. As you were talking, I would kind of have my wheels turning a little bit, and I want to backtrack one step. Same thing with the marketing company. The hardest part is just getting somebody to say yes. So I want to backtrack for like your business side. You have a package that's as low as $79 a month to start a business, which to me blows my mind that you can start a business for $79 a month. The businesses we've started was not that. Yeah. So just the opportunity that people have to do that boggles my mind. But then you have people that still say no. Like they're searching for it, but then they're still saying no. So how do you tackle that hurdle when you're on a phone call with these people and just trying to even get them on the program? Because once you have them on the program, you can work on them and work on their mindset. But how do you overcome that on the initial phone call?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So I'm going to give you my take on it. My take could be totally wrong, and it could be different than, what our viewers are, used to, or what they believe, or what they've been taught. But I'm one where I can't want it more than you.
Yeah.
I can't. So I don't go into it where like I have to have this person in. I try never to have that, right? Or in sales, you call it commission breath. I don't, because I'm not gonna. I can't want your dream more than you, right? You got to want your dream.
Yeah.
So I just look at it like if I'm on the phone with them for 10 minutes, I have 10 minutes to be able to impact and influence them. And hopefully that can stay in them. And maybe next time they're going through hardship, they'll remember, hey, that phone call with Coach Martin. That's all it is, right? Our job, think about it, is to plant and the water, and the Lord brings the increase. So even on a call, I'm just going to plant, I'm going to water, and I'm going to let them know what could be, what could be. Like, what could their life be like?
Yeah.
What could their children's life be like? Can you imagine building something so big that generations that don't even get to physically see you are impacted by you? So I have that short opportunity to like build them up and show them like what could be.
Yeah.
Right. But ultimately, we all have to move our own feet.
Yeah. No, I completely understand, because I'll go into meetings, or Owen will go into meetings, and you just get into these meetings, and when you're talking to them, sometimes it feels like you want it more than them. Like, hey, we can get your business here. We can do this as far as marketing. And it's like, why am I wanting this more than you? And it's sometimes very confusing. And I'm like, I don't even understand why you have a business if you're not really wanting it. And so that's why I wanted to ask, just because it's confusing sometimes of like, why'd you start this, but then you don't want to grow or do anything with it? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I get it. I would even encourage you to, we'll kind of like dive in real quickly on that, right? Think about it. So the particular people that are in this situation, right? They're in the process. They're more at the beginning of the process, but there's still a process. And remember, like, they've been lied to, and they've been told stories that don't serve them. So they live in comfort, right? Which comfort the thing about it is, it's not supposed to be about us. I get it. We want to be able to not have to worry about money, not have to worry about any of that stuff. I get it. But ultimately, as a believer, it's not about you, and it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's about how we can serve, how we can pour to impact and influence God's people, right? So that's the goal. So when we're lied to, and I think we're lied to by the enemy, to just stay in comfort. So we've been conditioned, our parents have been conditioned, our grandparents have been conditioned, everyone's been conditioned to like, hey, live in comfort, get a good job, get, stability, get your deal, you're safe, play it safe. You know what I mean? And playing safe doesn't serve the world. So, it just remember, like, it is a process with people. You know what I mean? So like before I could get impatient and be like, oh, get out. But they have to go through the same process as you and I, and we're still going through the process. Yeah. We all go through the process until the day we leave. So, you know what I mean? Yeah,
the comfort thing definitely sticks for me, because I've noticed there's actually been one company where it was an older gentleman that was leaving and a younger kid coming in, and he's like fired up and all about it. Mm. But it's always the guys that have had the business 10 years, 15 years. They're just living in comfort. Like, hey, I don't need more. Like, I'm good where I'm at. But then you have the new generation coming up that actually want to be entrepreneurs, which I feel like during this time is very, very far and few between. Like, there's not a lot of people during my generation that really want to start businesses or go out and do those things. So when I see it, I get excited, seeing them pumped up and excited and fired up, and taking that step to grow. So,
yeah, we've never had a time in the history of our planet where we've been able to have a time as today where people can build wealth at the rate that they can build it. But with that being said, we've never had a time in the history of our country, the planet, where people have been more distracted. Mm. And, I do think it all comes down to, the enemy distracts us. He puts us in comfort. And these are lids that have been placed on us. It's generational. And then when we eventually come to the realization that it truly is not about us, so I'm going to do the things I'm going to do. It's not just about myself and my wife. It's about God's people. Now, we're going to be the benefactors of that, because as I was saying about the money in the shadow, it's going to still be there. But ultimately, it's about providing value and impact to God's people. And I think that's what we're called to do. So they'll get there. It just might take them a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, definitely. And I know you've talked about how businesses are going to be basically what kind of helps build the God's kingdom during this time, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. Billy Graham has a famous quote, right, that he believes in the end time. The move of God will come through the marketplace. But I mean, go biblically. You know what I mean? Like the Lord took all his all his apostles in the marketplace. He found them all. When you even look at the statistics, right? I think I read the other day where it was like 76% of funds used for like poor and homeless are done through the private sector. Well, how can that be? We've spent, probably, hundreds of billions of dollars, but the private sector, in the private sector, you have an opportunity. Like the bigger your company gets, the more money you earn, the more impact and influence you have. And money's a tool. So you have the ability to use that tool to impact and influence more people. You know what I mean? And that's influence. Like I always think about, being at a restaurant with your wife. And, the server comes to you and, she's lady and you could tell she's holding back tears.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, what's going on? And she's like, I can't talk about it. No, what's going on? I'm a single mom. I can't pay my rent, about to get kicked out. I don't know where to go. Most of us as believers will be like, oh, I'll pray for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we should pray for her.
Yeah.
But there's no impact in that. You know what I mean? There's no impact just to say, I'm going to pray for you. Imagine being the one that says, hey, you know what? How much is your rent? What if I take care of it for the next 12 months? What if I take care of it for the next 5 years? Oh my gosh, you would do that? No, the Lord is going to do that. He told me to take care of it. You know what I mean? There's impact in that. So when I look at it from a business standpoint, man, you have the ability to impact so much.
Yeah.
You really do. And you're going to get people that are always going to be like, oh, I can't believe you, or whatever the case is. But, when you look at the Bible, I mean, who was the one that complained about the money? It's usually the one that, that it doesn't have pure thoughts in the first place. So that's how I look at business. I look at, money as a tool that we truly get to help and impact people in a mighty, mighty way. And God's called us as believers anyways to leave an inheritance to our children's children. So it's a command. You know what I mean? Yeah. A command to be able to not just set up your kids, but your kids' kids. Yeah. That's a command of the Lord that I think a lot of times believers forget about. So I love it. I mean, I love it. I'm not going to say it's easy. It's not easy. It's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be challenging, because God's a process God. Think about for a minute, if God could, I tell people this, God could have created everything in a moment. He could have, he's God, but he didn't. He created everything in 6 days. Why? Why didn't he just create everything at the very moment?
Process.
It's a process.
Yeah.
So he's leading by example. He's showing you that everything is a process. So we should embrace the process, because in the process we grow and we get ready so we can walk through the doors, right, that he has for us. In this case, the promised land, or your purpose, what he's purposed you for. So, I would say we have to embrace it. We have to hey, I don't understand it. I'm going to be scared, but Lord, I'm going to trust you.
Yeah. I'll end with this final question and I'll let you close it out if you want. If somebody's teetering on wanting to start a business, or they've been talking about it for a year or two and they kind of feel that pull, but they're just struggling with making the leap, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would always say that, God's never going to move a parked car. He's not going to, right? So it's never about coming to the place where you're ready, because you're never going to feel ready. You're not. It's about working the muscle of intentionality. So you're going to have to get to the point where you just said, listen, I'm scared. Lord, I don't get it, but I believe that you put that in my heart, and I'm going to trust you. So what God asks you to do is to stand up and walk to the Red Sea and watch the Lord part the Red Sea. But he ain't parting it unless you get up and walk to it. He didn't part it while they were back in Egypt. So you got to get up and actually walk. We got to move our feet. As Christians, that's what we're called to do, right? I always say that we're not the ones that control the outcomes. The Lord is. But we have to do the things that God tells us to do so he can actually move those levers. Yeah. You know what I mean? He could do whatever he wants, but he chooses to partner with his people. But it starts with, do you believe? And if you do, you have to get up and you got to move your feet. And the cool thing about it is, I'll kind of end it this way. Think of like a mountain. So you think of a mountain. So you have a mountain. Now, there's probably a lot of different ways to climb this mountain. There's probably a straight way. It's probably like harder. And there's probably one where you can go to the right and it's got a lot of ziggy zaggies and you could probably go to the left. You probably all these ways. And I kind of look at it like with us, because at the end of the day, right, even if you take the wrong path, the Lord's going to redirect you. So the Lord will close the doors and he'll open other ones. But if you don't move your feet and you're at the bottom of the mountain, he's not closing anything. He's not opening anything, because it starts with us moving your feet. So what I would tell you is, if the Lord deposited something in your heart, trust that it was he that deposited in your heart. Then I would encourage you to get up, move your feet, and get rocking and rolling. Now, if you're scared, definitely I can go on. You get yourself some mentors. You get friends that are going to be in your corner, that are not going to be like, oh, no, don't leave comfort. No, get friends that are going to encourage you, that are going to help you. What can I do? Is there anything I could do for you? You want to make sure that you have an environment like that. Get a team around you that's going to help you, because there's going to have days when you feel like quitting. There's many days where I felt like quitting. I'm sure there's a gazillion days where you felt like quitting.
Yeah.
It's just human nature. But trust me, if you trust him and we move our feet and we watch what a powerful God can do in our lives, you're going to look back and be like, oh, I'm so thankful that I did.
Awesome.
Dillon, it was a pleasure having you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an honor, and look forward to doing more of these with you.
Yeah, for sure. So, hey, everyone, have a great day. Make sure you share this. I'm sure you have friends out there that definitely need to hear this. Follow us on social. Until next time, I'm Coach Martin.
I'm Dillon.
And we are out.